Hello everyone, I'm Rakesh and today I'm going to go over the stateful processing of Apache Beam. So today I will go cover the basic concepts of the stateful processing, then I'll walk you through the code and finally I'll demo it, and at the very end I will just list down the resources that you can use to go over the concepts. So stateful processing is a very powerful concept in Apache Beam. Like most of the processing are based on the Pardue, which is represented as do fund. So basically, what happens generally, do fund processes all the element each as they come. But without the stateful processing, they are just as a function, right? But when you add the statefulness in this, that means basically it is persisting all this data in a state, and you can retrieve it later as well. What happens that all these elements are passed as a key value pair, and in some cases, if you have used windowing, then it will be key plus the window that is passed to do fun function. Basically, a runner invokes do fun method with each element for key plus window. Do fun reads and writes state. Like as you can see the diagram on the left side, there is a cylindrical icon which represents the state, and all the rectangular items, those are the element which are being read or written in the state. And as you can see at the very end, it is processing. So it is outputting the result, and that is done in two ways. Either the process function in the do fun is generating that element after processing it or after transforming it, or there could be a timer callback which is generating that data. And you can implement any kind of transformation, or you can customize the transformation however you like. Most of the transformation like map, flat map, any kind of transformation, right? Those are provided to you by the SDK. But if you want further customization, you can use the stateful processing, and you can do that as well. And it is way powerful than any other API. Let's go on the codes part. So as you can see on my editor, I'm showing the code of the stateful processing. What I have done over here is basically I have created a kind of input data for the pipeline just for the demonstration purposes. And over here, if you look, I intentionally created a couple of repeated data, which is also present. So in this data field, in this data item, there are basically three values. One is the key, the other one is the data value itself, and then the timestamp. So timestamp will be used to timestamp the input data, and that could be further used in windowing. Yeah. And the implementation that I have done over here is basically trying to dedupe the data. Dedupe the data. This is just for demonstration purpose, demonstrate the usage of the stateful processing. It could be the same functionality could be implemented in different way using different transforms. Yeah. So over here, you can see there is a class that I have defined over here, which is extending the do fund. And the most important part is the process element. So process element will be invoked by the SDK automatically, and every time it will pass the element. And then there are a couple of other interesting things that you see over here is the state. If you look here, the state spec is defined, and in this case, I have used the set state. Set state will ensure that there are no duplicate element there. And for our demonstration perspective, as we are demonstrating that we are trying to dedupe it. So set is the right operation for this one. And then we are also using the timer spec. And just to notice over here, I have used the watermark timer. There could be different timer, it could be a processing time as well, but for our implementation perspective, watermark timer makes more sense. as we will be accumulating all the element, and the end of the window, we want to emit those data, which whatever data that we have accumulated so far during the window. And in this element, as I had mentioned earlier, like the key and the value will be being passed, for each element will have key and the data, and it will be passed to the process. So as you can see, I'm just extracting out the key and the value over here. Then I'm doing another thing as well over here. Based on the window, I'm trying to figure out what is the window end time, and accordingly, I'm setting the timer. So as we approach the end of the window, the timer callback will be called automatically. And then at the end of this process method, I am setting or adding the value in the set state. And over here, in the expiry timer, as you can see over here, I have defined a callback, and there I'm accessing the buffer state over here. One thing that you need to remember, that you need to define all these variables over here. System will inject all these variables value automatically, as it can identify based on the specs defined over here. And another thing to notice over here, in this process method, I am not yielding or returning any value. This is purely for my implementation perspective. Like in your implementation perspective, you can return the value. In my implementation, I am accumulating all the data throughout the window, and at the very end of the window, I'm just emitting the data. Okay, and in other implementation, it is quite possible that you are just transforming the data, you are storing some data in the state or retrieving the data state in the state, and then you make some decision based on that, and then finally you decide to emit or not emit. So it's completely up to you how you implement that one. And then in the this callback, what I'm doing is I'm just printing one statement just to show you that when this will be printed, and I'm reading all the element from the state, and then finally I'm yielding that values. And this is another print statement just for printing the elements. And here is the definition of the entire pipeline. So what I'm doing is, based on the input, I'm creating a pipeline. Then I'm applying a map operation, which is basically timestamping all those value. And if you remember earlier in the input data, I had put the timestamp. So I'm just extracting out the timestamp for timestamping those elements, and then yeah. And then after I have done the timestamping on those elements, I am doing window into for 1 minute. So as you can see over here, effectively, I have created three groups based on the timestamp plus 1 minute plus 2 minutes, right? So yeah, and then I'm doing this. Yeah, so over here, what I'm doing is I'm just extracting out the value into a tuple and creating the key and the value field. After this operation, I do not want the timestamp value. If you remember, for each element, we had the key, we had the value and the timestamp, but after this operation, I'm just extracting out key and value and passing it. And finally, those elements will be passed to do deduplicate stateful operations process method. And once this stateful process emits the data, then it will finally go to the print elements, which will print those elements. Okay. Now it's demo time. So as you can see on my terminal, I have I have set up the environment, and I'm going to run this command. So this command will basically launch the pipeline. Yeah. And as you can see over here, this blue line is basically showing that the callback method has been invoked, and this green line is showing what are the elements which are which we are printing on the screen after processing it. So as you can remember earlier, we we had duplicate data, but if you look here, we do not have the duplicate data for that specific window. And these combination of prints are for each window, like the timer and the items, they are for each window. And as you can remember, like I had divided data into three groups, or right, based on the timestamp, and that's why you see three such groups over here as well. And similarly for these one as well, even though they were duplicate data, but on the screen or on the terminal, you do not see those many duplicate data over here. So yeah, that's the end of the demo. And I want to go back to the presentation again. So just in case, like if you want to explore further, here are some of the resources. I have provided a link for my pull request that you can copy, and then you can play with that. And if you want to read further about the stateful processing, there is a link that I have provided over here. And in case you have some questions, then feel free to ask me on the Discord channel. That's all for now. Thank you, guys.